The House will come to order. Today's Pledge of Allegiance will be by Crystal Ruvalcaba from Metropolitan State University in Denver, Colorado.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Representatives Arndt. Becker J. Becker J.
Excused.
Becker K. Beckman. Benavides. Representative Benavides.
He's walking in now.
Oh, Beckman. Okay.
Yeah, Benavides walking in now.
Excused.
Bridges. There he is. Buck. Buckner.
We got you. Representative Benavides, we got you.
Buckner. Representative Buckner.
Where's Janet?
She? Do you see her? Do you see Buckner?
Excused.
Carver. Oh, there she is. Catlin. Coleman. Covarrubias.
Excused.
Danielson. Escar. Representative Escar.
There she is, right there.
Everett. Exum. Foot. Representative Foot.
Excused.
Garnett. There he is. Janal. Representative Gray. Hamner. Hanson.
Excused.
Parrott. Hooten. Humphrey. Jackson. Kennedy. Kraft Tharp. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lebsock. Lee. Leonard. Lewis. Liston. Lantine. Lundeen. McKean. McLaughlin. Melton. Michelson Janae. Neville is excused. Pabon. Excused. Pedersen.
Say Foot.
And members, please do wave or verbally say here. We do have another person, Mr. Jacob Clore, who's helping us today.
That's okay.
I've already put it.
Is Pedersen? Rankin. Ransom. Ryer. Roberts. Rosenthal. Sane.
Okay, excused.
Salazar. Sandridge. Oh. Sice. Singer. Thurlow. Valdez. Van Winkle's excused.
Representative Van Winkle's excused. Thank you, Mr. Claver. Oh, you made it. You joined us today. Good morning.
Weissman. Willett. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Wist. Young. Madam Speaker.
Present. With 58 present and 7 excused this Friday morning, we still have a quorum. Representative Kennedy, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of the Journal of Thursday, February 22nd, 2018 be dispensed with and approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
All right, members, you have heard the motion. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. No! Oh, goodness, that motion still passes. Announcements and introductions. Representative McLaughlin, good morning. Uh-oh. Hold on, I'm gonna help you out a little bit. Announcements and introductions. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, Fort Lewis College here today. I just happen to have a giant T-shirt to show you Fort Lewis College. And I would like to introduce to you the president of Fort Lewis College, who is our guest today, Dean Thomas. She's over here by herself, so please give her a round of applause. She's educating the youth for tomorrow. And last night, former Senator Ellen Roberts was here, and she is going to be, with Senate approval, the new member of the Board of Trustees for Fort Lewis College. So we're keeping it local over there. So please go over and give your best to Dean Thomas today. Fort Lewis College. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us at the Capitol. Representative Buck.
And whether you like it or not, I got my upper division accounting classes at Fort Lewis, and I can't tell you how such outstanding professors I had. And Fort Lewis is just amazing college. So welcome to the Capitol, and thanks for being here, and thanks for the breakfast.
All right. Further announcements or introductions. Representative Escar. Members, we do have a tribute this morning. Representative Escar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, if I could have your attention, please. I have some amazing guests here with us in the House and in the gallery today. I have a tribute for them, and if you're comfortable, I would love for you to read it out loud.
Sure. Why not? State of Colorado, the House of Representatives convened in the 71st General Assembly hereby extends sincere commendations to TRIO programs. TRIO federal outreach and student services programs have been assisting low-income individuals, first-generation college students, and individuals with disabilities in furthering their education for over 40 years. TRIO includes 8 programs that provide valuable education services to Colorado residents looking to progress through the academic pipeline from middle school to post-baccalaureate programs. It also includes a training program for directors and staff of TRIO projects. The members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to recognize and thank TRIO programs for their hard work and wish those involved in the programs the best of luck in their honorable endeavors. On request of Representative Danea Escar, given this 23rd day of February 2018, State Capitol in Denver.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, members. Please be seated. I just wanted to say a few words about the program itself. Many of you know I talk about it a lot, but before I came here, one of the jobs I was honored to have was an academic advisor for the Upward Bound program, which is part of TRIO program, both at CSU Pueblo and at Pueblo Community College. And the more I worked with these programs and these students, I realized what an amazing program TRIO programs really are. It's funded on the federal level. They work with students of every need and every ability, and they want to make sure that everybody has equal footing when it comes to pursuing higher education and making their lives better. The ask I have for all of you members is any time you have conversations with your congressperson, please remind them how important funding this important program is and to ask questions. If you have any more questions, there's plenty of people in the gallery today. They're going to be around for a bit, and I am honored to have my members from Pueblo here on the floor. So if we could just give them all a round of applause and welcome them, and happy TRIO Day.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us at the Capitol today. Further announcements or introductions? Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You all know that caucuses are March 6th. I'm just reminding you, on March 7th, we will start on the floor at 11 a.m. So rural legislators can get home and get back in time for the floor, 11 a.m., March 7th.
Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, members. And I'm happy to announce that it is Grand Junction Chamber of Commerce Legislative Day at the Capitol. We have in the gallery, I believe, we have some Grand Junction Chamber of Commerce members. Diane Schwenke leads a group of 30 to 40 people over here every year to understand the legislative process and talk to you about Mesa County and Grand Junction issues. So I hope you'll see them around the chamber today. On the floor, we have Jessica Schaefer, Casey Tuffley, Stephanie Reese, and Taryn Warren. Say hello to them. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Representative Willett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to correct my colleague. It's the Grand Junction Area Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget Palisade, Fruita, Loma, Colburn, and my other great towns in Mesa County.
They share our wonderful towns. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, it is Veterans Caucus this Monday. Subject is women veterans, and if you want lunch, let Jerry know today. It will be at noon across the street on the 6th floor in the big room. Thank you.
All right, further announcements or introductions? Further announcements or introductions? Going once, going twice. Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
All right, seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills. Representative Roberts. All right, members, you have heard the motion. Representative Roberts is off to a good start. Seeing no objection, he will take the chair.
Yes, remember? We're here, we're ready to go.
Yeah, right. The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading the bills at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader. And since it is Friday, the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Clower, please read the title of House Bill 1126. Oh, Madam Majority Leader.
Oh, never mind, I was skipping.
Mr. Clower, please read the title of House Bill 1126.
House Bill 1126 by Representative Rosenthal concerning the permissible regulation of dogs in common interest communities.
Representative Rosenthal.
Good morning, members. So I move House Bill 1126 and the committee report.
To the committee report.
So the committee report basically restated something that we already have in law, so it was not necessary, so we deleted it.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the committee report is adopted. Representative Rosenthal, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members, the reason I brought this bill is because, so first of all, a lot of Coloradans are struggling right now. A lot of Coloradans are struggling to find a place to live. And they can't find one that's affordable. And if you have a bigger dog, it's almost impossible. Apartments don't allow it. Houses don't allow it. If you're trying to rent, if you're trying to get into an HOA, either to buy a place or to rent a place, it's also impossible. So we had testimony in committee of so many people who are struggling to find a place, and they couldn't get one. The answer at the inn was always no. Whether it was a trailer park or a condo or a single-family home that was in an HOA, the answer was always no. And right now, people are being discriminated against. That's right, members, discrimination based on the size, the breed, or the weight of a dog. What we should be looking at is the behavior of the dog, or the behavior of the owner of the dog, or the dog's human, so to speak. Because that's all that really matters. And HOAs have a lot of power that will be retained in this bill to deal with that. If a dog leaves waste lying around in the community, if it's barking, if it's biting someone or nipping at someone, an HOA has a lot of recourse that it can take to hold the dog accountable, to hold the owner accountable, the human accountable, in order to make sure that there's good behavior by the dog in the community. So this bill is necessary, members, to make sure that we keep families together, and dogs are part of our families. We know this from our own experience, from our constituents' experience. People should not have to either go to a more expensive place to live or get rid of their dog with the possibility that they have to give it to someone who may not want to give it to someone. Like we heard testimony, dogs were even taken out of state. And the person couldn't even visit them unless it was like every 6 months. It's tearing her up. And God forbid that it should go to a shelter that puts the dog to sleep. Although I know that they try their darndest to make sure they have a home. So let's pass this bill, members. Let's remove the discrimination against Colorado families, hard-working Colorado families that are trying to stay together with their pets. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in support of this bill. I view it as an individual liberty bill and a property rights bill. And I fully agree with the bill sponsor that dogs are members of the family, but they're also property. And I, for one, am not going to support any efforts by HOAs or any other entity that would tell me what I can do with my property in the place that I live. Very much in the same way where HOAs have in the past tried to regulate and tell homeowners whether or not they can put a flag on their homes. I think that's inappropriate, and I also think it's absolutely inappropriate for an HOA to dictate what type of dog you can have based on weight, size, and breed. I want to point out that HOAs are still able to regulate the behavior of these animals. So if there is bad behavior on the part of these animals, then the HOA can step in. But what this bill does is it prohibits HOAs from essentially discriminating against the type of breed you may have. So members, I rise in support, and I ask that you vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. This is one of the fun bills that we did in local government last week, and it was very much bipartisan, as you can tell. The way that the vote split came, there were people on both sides of the aisle voting yes and people on both sides of the aisle voting no. But what it came down to for me, it was the whole idea of the HOA. I was not necessarily looking at the short-term fact that we have a shortage of rentals available right now. I was looking more at the big picture, thinking this is permanent policy that we are writing right now. And so I just want to make sure that the HOAs aren't in a position of power. I think property owners should be able to have whatever restrictions they choose if they are renting a home or the other half of their duplex if they're living in it or whatever. Property owners can have restrictions, but this bill is about HOAs. And I don't think that HOAs should be in the position where they're dictating based on the size of a dog. I think you guys have probably seen pictures of my big Bernese dog, George, who's huge, but he's a big puppy. I mean, he's 14 years old, but he lays around and he's quiet and sleepy all the time. He would not be a problem even in a studio apartment because he would find a corner and sleep there. And I think banning a dog based on its size by the HOA, not the property owner, but by the HOA, is a mistake, and it really does limit people's options for finding a place to live. So anyway, thank you.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, members, I rise in opposition to this bill. I was on local government and I heard it last week. First of all, I want to commend Representative Rosenthal for his passion of loving dogs. We all love our dogs, no matter what size they are. And that includes myself, where we have a beautiful little mini golden doodle. But members, I would say, first of all, one reason why we need to oppose this bill is that if you're a dog owner, which many of us are, many people are, you have a certain responsibility to that dog, that if you're going to have a bull mastiff or a Saint Bernard or whatever kind of dog it may be, is that you've got to be able to find a suitable home for it. Because if you can't, that is your responsibility, not the dog's. So what we're basically doing with this bill, we are usurping the powers of HOAs, whether you like them or not. They have agreed to abide by their rules, and we're basically putting dogs over property owners. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. The witnesses who came and testified for this bill, they were singing a sad song that they can't find a home for their dog. Well, virtually all of those people had great, big, humongous dogs. And that is their responsibility, that they should be able to find a suitable home for it. Don't make everybody else overturn their rules that they have legitimately voted on. And by the way, these people, they were not owners, they were renters. So they want to come in and force a property owner, the property owner, to overturn the rules that they have voted on themselves so that the renter can be able to have a home for their big dog. I don't think that's right. I think we need to put the responsibility back on the dog owner. And if you have a great big dog, you might be prepared to live out in the country. But don't cram it down the throat of HOAs when they have voluntarily, with a duly adjudicated and elected board, said we want to have these types of restrictions as to the dogs. I think it's really going to, I use a bad pun here, it's really going to come back and bite a lot of people. I thought of that on the fly, but it's really true. There's going to be some unfortunate incidences where there's going to be people that come in with Rottweilers or other type of vicious dog, and they're going to attack a little old lady or a child, and then the HOA is going to be adversely affected. So I urge a no vote with all due respect, Representative Rosenthal. I know you love your dogs. We do too, but it's about the responsibility of the dog owner. I urge a no vote on 1126. Thank you, members.
Representative Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this bill. This is a very classic case of using one issue when we're really discussing about another issue. This isn't an issue about dogs. This is an issue about what HOAs can and cannot do. And the state has too much control over HOAs as it is, and this exceeds our authority to be able to tell HOAs what they should be telling homeowners. Homeowners do have the right to be able to choose their dogs, and homeowners have the right to choose their HOAs. If you don't like an HOA, it's your neighbors that are sitting on the HOA board. Get out your little door hangers and hang a door hanger on your neighbor's home and say, my neighbor is out of their mind because they won't let me have my dog. Let's please elect a new HOA board member. That's all we have to do. We don't have to go to this state and ask state legislators to be able to decide what kind of dog should and shouldn't be part of an HOA's decision, because tomorrow it's just going to be paint colors. We don't like this color rouge. We want something else. So we should mandate that from the state and tell HOAs that they can only choose from this kind of paint colors than that kind. It's no different. So it's not about dogs. It's about the homeowners having the local control to be able to select their own HOA members. We don't have to get involved in this. So I know that that might put one of these sponsors in the doghouse, but we should be able to let the HOAs and the neighbors select their own board members. So I urge a no vote on this. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect to some of the people that are opposed to this bill, I want to point out that it's not so simple to actually go replace the members of an HOA board. Let's just say, for example, that you're in violation of certain HOA regulations. You're going to be racking up fines. You're going to be getting notices in the mail. And you're going to be having to deal with something potentially for a year until you can actually remove these HOA members. And even then, there's no guarantee that these individuals are going to be removed in themselves. So you are taking risk by trying to, quote, remove people and hang little signs saying these people are trying to dictate what I can do with my own property, and all the while you're going to potentially have these fines and a lien against your home. Whereas in a normal election, you're not going to have to face those kind of issues if you want to see change. So I would just simply say that this is a well-measured, balanced bill. It still allows HOAs to regulate and dictate behavior of the animal. If the behavior is the issue, then they can step in. But with respect to the weight, size, and breed, I don't think that's the place of the HOA. In the same way that an HOA cannot tell me whether or not I can put a flag, an American flag, on my home, they cannot tell me what kind of dog I can have in my dwelling. So I urge this committee to vote yes. Thank you.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to follow up on all the puns here. I am positively a no vote on this bill, and let me tell you why. I find it a little bit ironic that somebody who runs for the state legislature is complaining how hard it is to run a campaign for an HOA board, but that must be a heck of an HOA board. So here's the reason I'm a no vote on the bill. I love dogs. I have large dogs. I have large dogs that a lot of places may ban. However, I choose to have dogs. It's difficult to find rentals with dogs. I understand that. But anytime you bring down the force of government and say to any HOA, we're going to impose these regulations upon you, you're actually going to be hurting the very people you're seeking to help. And that is, if you're putting regulations onto a board, it may be more difficult to find those rental properties because with larger dogs comes a higher insurance bill. And I'm not knocking large dogs, and I'm not knocking certain breeds. However, if an owner doesn't properly train a dog, a large dog can do much greater damage. My family knows this. So a small dog may bite more, but they're going to create less damage. So there's going to be a higher insurance cost for landlords. There's going to be a higher insurance cost for common areas in HOA. That's going to make costs go up for the very people we're seeking to help. So I'd urge a no vote on this bill. Its intention is very good, and I love animals. However, if you want to seek to change an HOA board, then run for the HOA board. Use some of your campaigning skills to go door to door and put door hangers up. Put notices up that, you want to change this policy within the HOA. I think we can help folks do that, especially I think a lot of people here live in an HOA. But anyway, I just want to throw a bone to the sponsors and say kudos for the attempt here. I really like the idea behind the bill, and thank you so much for bringing it.
Representative Everett. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I don't know, certain representatives from Weld County, I'm wondering, what if the HOA restricts your ability to break a window to get that doggy out?
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
So, folks, this is my pet peeve. Thought I'd get that out of the way early. Here's what I would ask you to consider in this legislation. Do we want to get in the HOA business? We don't. I don't. I don't know anybody here who does. In fact, this is a remarkable thing. I have two, we used to call them LBDs, little brown dogs. They are now medium brown dogs. They may or may not fit within the guidelines we're hearing in this bill. However, I get my choice, whether it's more expensive, Representative Rosenthal, whether it means that I have to look a little bit further afield. There's no guarantee that we get to live exactly where we want, exactly how we want, especially when the choices we've made affect us. I would say, even more importantly, if you really want to live in a community, you've probably done the research. I think you'd agree with that. You've probably looked at where that is in location to schools and your work and the other things. And if that HOA board has a regulation against larger dogs, I would not suggest that you run for the HOA board. I would suggest that you attend their next meeting. I would suggest you ask them if there is a variance for your larger dog or if they are willing to change their policy. That's how simple government is. Government starts right at your kitchen table, right where you decide this is the way I would rather have things be, and then you go do something about it. I urge a no vote.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I just wanted to come up and ask a quick question. Of course, I'm sensitive to, variations in sizes of canines and the issues that can bring up for their owners. But I'm wondering if there is a small breed lobby, and if you've contacted them. This is a question for the bill sponsors. Because I think they've got a pretty good thing going right now, some of these HOAs, where they are protected. And as Representative Sain was saying, it can be very dangerous for the smaller breeds of dogs. So just want to ask that question and mainly just come up and let you know that I stand in dogged opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really appreciate a lot of the questions from my colleagues. But as we know, and as all of us know from our own experience and also experience in the community, it really doesn't matter the size, weight, or breed of the dog, because little dogs leave a mess and they bark and then they bite, or they don't. Medium-sized dogs do the same. Larger dogs do the same. Sometimes you have larger dogs, all they do all day is mope around, kind of look at you and say, when are you feeding me or petting me, and go to sleep. And you have little dogs that do the exact opposite. Not to say that they're all like that, but that you have a diversity, an array of all breeds, all sizes, and all weights that do all things. So it's all up to the dog itself and the owner and how they contain the behavior of the dog. So I'm hoping you'll vote with Humane Society, Best Friends, and others, Colorado Federation of Animal Welfare Agencies, and support this bill. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1126? All right. Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1126. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. House Bill 1126 passes. Yeah. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1172 till March 1st.
House Bill 1172 is laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1198.
House Bill 1198 by Representative Sane and Kraft-Tharp, also Senators Donovan and Smallwood, concerning the establishment of best practices for state boards and commissions.
Okay.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this might be one of the best bills of the year, so I'm just giving you the precept there. The Legislative Audit Committee noticed across 12 audits that certain boards and commissions were not adequately managing. Oh, I'm sorry, I got to move the bill. I moved the bill HB 18-1198.
And then we do the committee report.
And to the committee report.
Representative Kraft-Tharp, to the committee report.
Thank you. I move the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report.
That is so moved.
And I'll talk
to the
about
Business Affairs and Labor Committee report.
Thank you. So the Business Affairs and Labor Committee passed an amendment that did a couple of things. One is it moved the start date of implementation to January 1st, which would give the department a little bit more time to be able to organize it. Then it clarified which boards and commissions this was actually talking about, and so made that clear for everyone. And then gave 3 amendments that was requested by the boards and commissions department to basically, you know, while it talks about including policies, also bylaws for those people that have bylaws. Mm-hmm. So we ask for your support for the Business Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The Business Affairs and Labor Committee report passes. Representative Sane, to the bill.
To the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was so excited about this bill, as you can tell. So back to the best bill of the year. So across 12 audits, our Legislative Audit Committee noticed that there is certain commonalities and certain similarities, especially between some of the boards and commissions, you know, with potential conflicts of interest, maybe not operating within statutory limits. I do want to say being a volunteer is an honorable but difficult position sometimes. These volunteers on these boards and commissions do want to do the right thing. So what this bill is providing is we're providing a framework for best practices for them to do the things they need to do within their statutory limits, within legislative intent, but also making sure they even have a review of key communications and any policy-making activities so they can make the best decision possible.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1198? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1198. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. House Bill 1198 passes.
All
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 124 until February 26th.
Senate Bill 124 is laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 126 till February 29th.
Senate Bill 126 is laid over until February 29th at the request of the Majority Leader.
Oh, February 29th. Yeah. Oh my gosh. How about March 1st? How about we go with March 1st instead of February 29th?
Sounds like a good idea. Senate Bill 18126 is laid over until March 1st at the request of the Majority Leader.
I'm disappointed no one in the chamber here caught that. Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Okay.
Madam Majority Leader.
I move to lay over House Bill 1112 till February 26th.
House Bill 1112 is laid over until February 26th at the request of the Majority Leader. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I move to lay over House Bill 1078 till February 26th.
House Bill 1078 is laid over until February 26th at the request of the Majority Leader.
Which brings us to House Bill 1148.
Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1148.
House Bill 1148 by Representative Michelson Janae, also Senator Crowder, concerning the prohibition against a carrier requiring step therapy for covered persons with stage 4 advanced metastasized cancer.
Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
Members, this bill is an important bill for our community members who have stage 4 metastatic cancer, which means that cancer has inhabited at least 4 organs in their body, and they are at the end of their rope. And we would like for our community members who are as sick as our stage 4 metastatic cancer patients are to be able to take the most advanced medicine that their doctor recommends. There are guardrails around this. They have to be FDA approved and they have to be on the formulary, but they would be the most advanced drugs available in that parameter. I ask for an aye vote. I move the bill and ask for an aye vote.
House Bill 1148 has been moved. Is there a committee report, Representative?
No. Oh, yes, sorry. I apologize. Yes, thank you. I move House Bill 1148 and the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report. Thank you.
House Bill 1148 and the Public Health Care and Human Services report has been moved to the committee report.
The bill passed committee 12-0.
Is there any further discussion on the Public Health Care and Human Services committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Public Health Care and Human Services committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The House Public Health Care and Human Services report is adopted. Representative Michelson Janae to the bill.
As I stated before, good bill, vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1148? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1148. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. House Bill 1148 is passed.
Thank you.
Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1180.
House Bill 1180 by Representative Melton, concerning access by a mental health professional to the files of a regulatory board regarding a dismissed complaint filed against the mental health professional.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1180 and the Public Health and Human Services Committee report.
House Bill 1180 and the Public Health Care and Human Services report is moved to the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just added some safeguards to ensure that we were protecting patient confidentiality with some additional redacting measures. With that, members, I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Public Health Care and Human Services committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Public Health Care and Human Services committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report is adopted. Representative Melton to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good bill, vote yes.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1180? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1180. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. House Bill 1180 is passed. Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1196.
House Bill 1196 by Representative Exum, also Senator Todd, concerning authorization to verify the disability of an applicant to the Aid to the Needy Disabled program.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1196 and the committee report from Public Health Care and Human Services.
House Bill 1196 and the committee report has been moved. Representative Exum to the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report, we had two amendments. One was to change certified psychologist just to licensed psychologists. And we struck line 13 to take out those other providers, and also changed line 14 on page 2 to read for certified health care, and ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report is adopted. Representative Exum to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I bring before you House Bill 1196 for application for the Aid in Needy and Disabled program. The process of qualifying for the AN program presents unnecessary barriers that are confusing for the applicants and delay processing and qualifying. In order to qualify for the program, individuals must have a medical professional verification that they are disabled to work. House Bill 1196 will align Colorado statute with federal law, adding licensed psychologists to the list of providers that can verify an applicant has disability and makes him or her unable to work. And sometimes the reason that we added psychologists to the list is psychologists are often in the best position to assess whether an applicant's mental illness makes him or her unable to work. The bill will make the processes work more smoothly and increase fairness for individuals living in poverty due to their severe mental health conditions, and ask for your support on 1196. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1196? Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in opposition of 1196, Aid to Needy Disabled. I voted yes for this bill in committee, but I have since then done some additional research. The bill expands eligibility, and I believe this is a somewhat problematic program. I don't support this bill. I believe that it is a dated, inefficient program that should be more closely scrutinized with stricter criteria, not less criteria. The Aid to Needy Disability program provides cash to low-income Colorado residents that are applying for federal Social Security income benefits. It is a unique state-funded, unique to Colorado state-funded program that was created years and years ago to create a financial bridge for individuals waiting for their approval for disability, back in the days when it took much, much longer than it currently is taking. The program is then reimbursed, the payments, if it is managed appropriately by the federal government. In an interview with the Associated Press, Governor Ritter, back in the day, said that these cash payments are the least efficient money spent on the safety net and no way ensure they go for basic needs. There was a discussion in the Denver Post with a Denver County Human Service caseworker that said about this program, for every person using the AND program as it was intended, there are untold others playing the taxpayers, people who have no legitimate claim to Social Security insurance, who are unwilling or unable to jump through the hoops, but who string everyone along as possible to collect $200 cash a month. So to find out if that's actually true, you need to look at the fiscal note. The fiscal note on this bill is very telling. The budget program is about $18 million. Only 2.3 is coming back in reimbursement. What does that mean? The federal government is only reimbursing for those who qualify and are eligible for the program. That's almost 10% of the amount of money that we are giving out are for people that actually go through the process. We don't need to expand this program. It's a state program. It's an outdated program. Even Governor Ritter tried to get rid of this program. It's an outdated, ineffective program. We need to audit this program. We need to stop funding this program. There are better ways. If we're concerned about people getting Social Security insurance benefits, then we need to funnel this money into the application process so that those that deserve the federal benefit get the federal benefit in a timely manner. There's no strings attached, and to allow a greater expansion of who can sign off on the dotted line so people can forever get $200 worth of cash without following the federal criteria is ineffective, inefficient, and it's not transparent. I ask you to vote no on this program.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to clarify a couple of things. So to put in perspective, when Governor Ritter cut the funding for the A&D program, it was actually when I was his senior policy advisor. We were facing the worst deficit that Colorado had seen in decades. We had to make sure that we reined in the budget, and it was very hard for us to do it by cutting this program. One of the reasons why we moved this program for an initial cut was because we knew it would be refunded again because of how important it was. As soon as this cut happened, we heard from people, the needy and the disabled, aid to the needy and the disabled, who were not able to make ends meet because they did not have this additional fund. And so I just want to make sure that when we're talking about the times of the Ritter administration and why the Ritter administration chose to do what it chose to do, to not mislead this body into thinking that the program was cut because it wasn't needed. The program was cut because we were cutting programs across the board because we were in the deepest recession that we had seen in decades. So I just wanted to clarify that for you, members. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1196? Representative Rankin.
Well, I will say that despite the fact that most of these folks might need aid, this really is a process problem. These people are waiting for an application. They wait for the state application, and then they wait for the federal application. So perhaps, as Representative Beckman pointed out, we ought to be worried about the application process rather than broadening the criteria and putting more people on the waiting list. So I think this is one of those programs that gets buried down in our funding, and we don't really take a hard look at what the real issue is. So I would suggest that we need a different approach to this problem, and that is to look at the process itself. And maybe that's not this bill, but a different perspective.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I refer again to the fiscal note and ask for a no vote on 1196. I have a big heart for the disabled and needy in the community and have worked for years. What's so frustrating about this bill is to say that the federal government will reimburse this money is inaccurate. The federal government reimburses those who qualify for the program, those who meet the criteria. So in the state of Colorado, we spent $18 million last year, and the federal government reimbursed us $2.3 million. That's a pretty large gap of people that the feds are saying do not qualify for this eligibility of the criteria that was set up when this program was established. The gap is growing. So, and I have, the caseworker from Denver County Human Services, the quote in the paper was that For every person using A&D program as it was intended, there are untold others playing the taxpayers, people who have no legitimate claim to Social Security insurance. And that is my concern. I'm concerned with people that are using the system, that it is not going to the people who are deserving and the criteria that it was established by. And so I would ask for a no vote.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we heard this in committee, members, and I can tell you that there was all sorts of folks from the disability community, from CCLP, from the Cross Disabilities, from the Homeless Coalition, and actually they were all in favor. There was no one that testified against this bill, and it really helps for assistance for people with disabilities, because that can take a long time, and it's really a problem in rural areas. It's difficult to get access to the Colorado Disability Program right now, and this current policy extends the time for it to work. One other thing I want to state is that there is no fiscal note. There is no monies in this fiscal note. So please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1196? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1196. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1196 is passed.
Thank you, members.
Mr. Claver, please read the title of Senate Bill 148.
Senate Bill 148 by Senators Martinez, Huminick, and Moreno, also Representative Lawrence and Exum, concerning the continuation of certain benefits through the State Employee Group Benefits Act for dependents of a state employee who dies in a work-related death.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 148, and I don't think we have, do we have a committee? And we don't have a committee report.
Senate Bill 148 is moved to the bill. Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is an important bill that is changing the benefit package for state employees. We have found over the last few years that we've had a few state patrol officers who were killed in the line of duty. And this was brought to my attention by Velma Donahue, the wife of Trooper Cody Donahue. He was killed at the end of November. And 6 days later, on the 1st of December, Velma took her daughter to the doctor's office because she was ill. And she was told at the doctor's office that they no longer had health insurance. Members, that should never happen to a state employee when they're killed in the line of duty. This bill will change that policy and make sure that state employees who are killed in the line of duty, if their family is on their insurance policy prior to their death, that policy is extended for a year. This is just a good policy for anyone who is working in the state in a very dangerous position, and I would ask for an aye vote on this.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm proud to run this bill with Representative Lawrence for a couple of reasons. One, as many of you know, I've served almost 36 years as a firefighter and worked alongside law enforcement and experienced families that lost their husbands and wives in the line of duty. And, you know, this bill cannot bring those lives back to the service of our state, but it is just a small gesture of our respect for their sacrifice and a measure of our appreciation for their grieving families. And I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 148? Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L001 and ask to be displayed.
L001 has been moved. It is displayed. Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During testimony in committee, we asked the department personnel of how limiting this was, because obviously we do want to take care of our troopers, or maybe a flagger that's with the Department of Transportation in those inherently dangerous jobs. So the question was posed, if you're in a simple office job and you died on the job in a simple office job, would you be covered under this bill? And he testified that yes, you would. What this amendment does, it just tightens the definition that someone like a state trooper that puts themselves in harm's way, or maybe a flagger with CDOT, or maybe somebody who works for the Department of Wildlife would be covered. So my concern is that this is too broad. This narrows it and really tailors it to who should be covered with benefits because they put themselves in a harm's way. I urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on L001? Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak in favor of this amendment. One of the questions that I was asking in committee when we were hearing this bill, which I did vote yes on the bill, and I definitely support the idea of wanting to extend health insurance benefits for the families of our fallen state patrol and people that are in occupations that are dangerous. And even Representative Lawrence, while she was presenting the bill, mentioned dangerous position, when people work in a dangerous position. Representative Exum said line of duty, when people are in the line of duty, and he mentioned his firefighter work, which they're not state employees, but we want to help people that who die in the line of duty and make sure their families have their health insurance coverage. But one of the questions that I had asked was how to define a work-related death. And they spoke about the OSHA requirements and how even if you trip on the carpet, if I fall down on the stairs here, that would be defined as a work-related death. And I seriously think that that might be a failing in this bill that we should try to address to make sure that we are helping people helping the families of people who died in the line of duty for a dangerous occupation, not necessarily somebody that ran into a door frame or dropped something on their foot and it festered. And I mean, there could be all kinds of other things that could happen in the, quote, line of duty per OSHA requirements. And so I just want to ask that you support this amendment, but then vote yes, but then also support the bill for our state patrol.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to encourage a no vote on this amendment. You know, we talk about, this being too broad. I say this is too narrow. I think we need to be very careful when we're talking about the death of any employee and respecting the needs of those families, and to try and parse words at this moment is the wrong way to go. This bill has already passed out of the Senate almost unanimously, if not unanimously, and passed unanimously out of the House, or I'm looking forward to a unanimous passage out of the House. But this is too narrow, and this isn't, we have fiscal analysts that look at these things. I'm sure somebody took a look at the fact of, well, what happens if somebody trips on the carpet? I don't know how many carpet trips have led to employee deaths, but I'm going to guess to 0. But to do this just creates another unnecessary regulation in the way of making sure that we treat the families of those who worked for us in any other way than we should. So I'm going to encourage a no vote.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware, when we look back over state employee deaths over the last 5 years, there have been 5 in the last 6 years that this would have applied to. So the language that's written in the bill, it's not as loosely defined as might be presented by folks who want to narrow it. I have some questions about what would imminent danger. That's a pretty subjective term. Would it apply to, would you exempt that CDOT worker that is working along the side of the road? They may be in imminent danger, they may not. It depends on traffic conditions. The same would apply to a state patrol officer. They may not always be in imminent danger. But what we're saying here, and this is coming from someone who's an employer, So I sign the front of a paycheck. I understand how benefit packages work. And what we do is we recognize the fact that, our employees may need something should a tragedy happen in their family. And our company pays for a life insurance policy for all of our employees. This isn't going that far, but we're saying if a state employee dies because of an injury that occurs during their work, that health insurance benefits should be continued for that family if they were already on the policy. And let's just make clear that that CDOT worker that was killed tragically earlier this year, it would not have applied to his family because they were not on his policy. So I think the bill is good as written, and I don't think we need this amendment.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, if you're in the private sector, you can work that out with your employees. We're doing a one-size-fits-all for all the departments that we have. If you treated them as silos, for example, like the Department of Labor versus Department of Transportation, I mean, each individual should be able to work that out. But some things are more inherently dangerous than others, like State Patrol, for example. They do put themselves in harm's way, like with Trooper Cody. CDOT worker, if they are in the inherently dangerous position of being a flagger, for example, on I-70, let's say, then this would cover them. So when I was working with the drafter, we were looking at the limiting language that had some sort of legal precedent that sort of tightened up the language to address this, but I think we're under a different standard. And then I hear all the time in this building that, oh, it's only been 5 people that this has affected over the course of the last 5 years, but that doesn't mean it's not a slippery slope, and it could be used and abused and open up to more. But we do want to protect our state troopers. We do want to put the people that are in harm's way. You want to make sure their families are covered. I think this limits it. I think it's a reasonable amendment. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on this amendment. There was a grand bargain made with workers' comp years ago so that workers are given certainty with respect to benefits that they receive for injuries and death occurring in the course and scope of employment. In exchange for that, they gave up the right to sue people in court for negligence. And this grand bargain is one that benefits employers by giving them certainty. It benefits employees by giving them certainty. And this amendment renders it uncertain. The last thing that the family of a deceased worker needs in this time of crisis and sadness is uncertainty as to whether or not they were injured in the course and scope. If they're injured in the course and scope of employment, regardless of whether it's risky or not risky, they are entitled to benefits. I urge rejection of this amendment.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I'd also like to mention that the language of this amendment could actually lead to increased litigation costs, because there have been a lot of disputes in the workman's comp area using this type of language that just drives up litigation and, to Representative Lee's point, delays benefits that should be going to the families of state employees who are killed in the line of duty. This is not an overexpansion of a benefit package. This is something that I think is appropriate, and I think the language in the bill is fine as it's written.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is limiting language that makes sure the people that are affected are taken care of and their families. This is a reasonable amendment that makes sure the people that are in harm's way are going to be taken care of. I don't think it's going to drive litigation costs. In fact, by tightening the language, it does the exact opposite. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Everett, sorry, can you define imminent? Because we've been trying to define imminent since our first year in office. If you remember, Representative McCann ran a bill that lasted for hours and hours and hours over the definition of imminent. So I would like your definition, because I believe using that word opens up a can of worms that cannot be defined at this time.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Representative Landgraf. I think eminent is putting yourselves in harm's way. So again, something that's inherently dangerous, something we learned in law school, like dealing with dynamite is eminently dangerous. So being out in traffic, something in law enforcement where you may deal with people that are criminals, that may have firearms or something like that, that's eminent danger. So I think it is defined. I think that there is standard there. I think, again, this just tightens up the language to make sure the people that should be getting these benefits get the benefits. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is not a good amendment. It's not needed, especially for families that are in crisis, and I ask for a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L001. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. This amendment fails. Madam Majority Leader. Representative Exum to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for the dialogue on this bill. Again, when somebody dies in the line of duty, we don't need to start to scrutinize how they died in the line of duty. The fact is that those families are in crisis, and they need the support, and this is a small gesture for all the other things that they're going to be dealing with to continue their medical benefits for 12 months. And ask for, reaffirm my yes vote for Senate Bill 148.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, that was a robust discussion, and I appreciate it. I think anytime you're looking at changing a benefit package, we should have a good discussion. But this is recognizing that there are impacts beyond what the normal course of a work duty may be. And I think having the state recognize that there are impacts to the families who are left behind is something that we need to be cognizant of. These are not interchangeable cogs in a wheel, and we shouldn't be changing language to something that is not clear and not clearly defined, especially when it comes to looking at workman's comp language that could lead to further litigation when a family doesn't need that kind of stress added after the death of a family member. So, members, I would ask for an aye vote on this very important piece of legislation.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 148. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 148 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we rise and report.
You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come to order. Mr. Claver, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it as under the consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1126 as amended, House Bill 1148 as amended, House Bill 1180 as amended, House Bill 1196 as amended, House Bill 1198 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 148 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1078, House Bill 1112, Senate Bill 124, laid over until February 26, 2018 and retaining their place in the calendar. House Bill 1172, Senate Bill 126, laid over until March 1st and retaining their place in the calendar.
Nice job, Mr. Claver. Representative Roberts. All right. Members, you have heard the motion, and there is an amendment at the desk. Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the Everett amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Claver, will you please read the Everett amendment to the Committee of the Whole?
Representative Everett moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Everett Amendment L001 to SB 148 to show that said amendment passed and that SB 148 as amended passed.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, we had a robust discussion. Not everybody was in the chamber during that discussion. Just to rehash, this limits what I think the intent of the bill was, to make sure that people that put themselves in harm's way, like your state troopers or your flaggers and CDOT, or maybe in Department of Wildlife that may be out in the wilderness in a unique situation, to make sure their families are taken care of. I think that it's too broad, and we heard testimony in committee that actually said if you are an office worker and you were to get hurt and die, you would still be covered by that. And of course, we want to cover our families, but we really want to make sure this is narrowly tailored and focused. We heard testimony in committee. This has only been 6 people that have been affected. But again, we create laws all the time. So it's only happened a couple times. And then we create the slippery slope to where it can be used and abused. But I want to make sure our troopers are taken care of. I want to make sure our CDOT workers are taken care of. People that put themselves in harm's way, but not all employees should be covered. I urge a yes vote.
Further discussion on the Everett Amendment to the Committee of the Whole. Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, we did have a pretty robust discussion on this. And I think the problem with the amendment as written is the word imminent. What is the definition of that? If you have a state patrol officer who's in the office, are they in imminent danger of being killed on the job? Maybe not. But when they transfer out to the field, does that then change their condition of work? There is language in workman's comp that actually defines some of this, and what this amendment would do would be to bring litigation into a tragic situation. And I don't think this is where we really want to have that family going through litigation to define what imminent is and dealing with the state in what should be a narrowly applied bill for life and health, or health insurance for family that is left behind. So I would ask for a no vote on this.
Further discussion, Representative Exum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask for a no vote on this amendment. The last thing we need is for families that are grieving for line of duty death is to deny them those benefits because it didn't meet the description that we put in, that we put a narrow description of how they died in the line of duty of death. So I ask for, reaffirm my no vote on the Everett Amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I mean, it would be unfortunate if they had to refer to workman's comp and go through that process. Again, I think this clarifies and tightens up the language. I think this makes it better for families where their loved ones were killed in the line of duty, in an inherently dangerous position like State Patrol and CDOT and other things. So I urge a yes vote. I think this is reasonable language. It's not going to open it up to lawsuits. In fact, I think it does the exact opposite. I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, the question before you is the Everett Amendment to the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Claver, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Hamner, Representative Williams, Representative Hamner. Please close the machine. With 12 yes votes, 48 no votes, and 5 excused, the Everett Amendment to the Committee of the Whole is lost. That now takes us back to the adoption of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Claver, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote on the report of the Committee of the Whole. Please close the machine. With 56 yes votes, 4 no votes, and 5 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. All right, so that takes us back to third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Claver, please read the title of Senate Bill 105.
Senate Bill 105 by Senator Baumgartner, House Representative Pabon, concerning clarifying changes to provisions that were contained in House Bill 17-1367.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 105 on third reading and final passage. Yeah, he said go ahead.
All right, members, you have heard the motion. The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 105 on third reading and final passage. Representative Pabon is okay with you all voting on it, even though he's not here. Mr. Claver, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. He has much trust and faith in all of you. Order, order, members. We are in third reading. Please close the machine. All right, with 57 yes votes, 3 no votes, and 5 excused, Senate Bill 105 is passed on third reading and final passage. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1127. Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over House Bill 1127 till Monday, February 26th.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1127 will be laid over. Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1097.
House Bill 1097 by Representative Catlin and Danielson, also Senators Quorum and Todd, concerning the ability of a person eligible for prescription drug benefits to choose the pharmacy at which to fill a prescription drug order.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1097 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1097 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Claver, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Members, please proceed to vote. Mr. Claver, please close the machine. With 33 yes votes, 27 no votes, and 5 excused, House Bill 1097 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Claver, please read the title of House Bill 1158.
House Bill 1158 by Representative Hamner, also Senator Lambert, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Corrections.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1158 on third reading and final passage.
All right, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1158 on third reading and final passage. Seeing some discussion, Representative Lipsack.
Members, fellow Coloradoans, House Bill 1158 is emblematic of our priority to reform our criminal justice system. As I was reading this bill, this supplemental for this year's budget, the same question came to my mind over and over again. And I think it's a fundamental question that we need to be asking ourselves if we truly believe in criminal justice reform. Why does our country, a country that I served honorably in the United States Marine Corps, why does our country and our state lock up, jail, imprison, incarcerate our citizens at a higher rate and in larger numbers than any other country in the world? That's a fundamental question we should be asking with this bill, House Bill 181158. Because this is a supplemental budget request to increase funding to do exactly that. Throw more of our citizens in jail. And this is not what I've been advocating for and what many of us have been advocating for years down at the state capitol. So that's the fundamental question. Why is it that our country, including our state, throws more of our citizens in jail than any other country in the world? And so let's talk about that. On the one hand, you can say, well, we have so many citizen criminals, and I disagree with this. We have so many citizen criminals that we have to incarcerate them at a higher rate and in more numbers than any other country in the world. That's one answer you can go for. I'm not going to prescribe to that answer. I will not. I will not accept that we have so many criminals in this country and in this state that we have to lock them up at a higher rate than any other country in the world. And so you look at a second possible answer. The second possible answer on the reason why we're locking up our citizens at a higher rate and in greater numbers than in any other country in the world is that maybe we've created, maybe we've manufactured different ways to lock up our own people. And maybe we need some more criminal justice reform. It could be one of those two answers, and I refuse to believe that it's answer number one. We live in the greatest country in the world, and we're not going to accept an answer stating that we need to lock up more of our people, more of our citizens. And so this bill, House Bill 181158, is emblematic to this challenge, and which is one of the reasons why I'm a no vote. Members, there's another reason why I'm a no vote. Last year, the legislature, including many folks in this body, voted for a bill that gave direction to our different state departments. And that direction was each department within state government was going to take a hard look at their spending. I think we excluded education and transportation. But other than education and transportation, this body in a bill asked each one of the departments, in working with this current administration, to take a hard look at the spending and to submit a budget request which was a 2% reduction in spending. That's what the bill said. That's what the direction this body said we should go in.
Representative Lipstock, is this to the bill?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And so, speaking directly to House Bill 181158, not only did we violate the spirit of Senate Bill 17267 in the budget request that came forward with not only this department but other departments. Here we're specifically talking about the Department of Corrections in House Bill 181158. Not only did we violate the spirit of 267 in the budget proposal of 2018 and 2019, But in this bill, we're specifically talking about a supplemental to this year's budget. And so we also violated the spirit in this year's budget. We asked the department to come forward with a budget proposal with a 2% reduction, and they failed to do that. And on top of that, now they're asking for more money in this year's budget. Members, this is not the direction we need to be going in. When the legislature gives a direction for the departments, they should comply. And they failed to do that. In addition to that, this bill is contrary to our goal of criminal justice reform. And I ask for a no vote.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very fun and interesting discussion yesterday morning on House Bill 1158. It even got me to stand up on top of a bill, although I don't think I gained much height standing on top of the very short bill. But I want to reaffirm a principle. A few weeks back, we marshaled a strong, rigorous opposition to this bill because we have learned throughout the years that Department of Corrections has been less than forthcoming with the legislative branch of government. That is undisputed. They have been less than forthcoming, and that's why we stood against this bill. For the past 3 weeks, nothing has changed with respect to them being more forthcoming with us. In fact, we still have the same amount of questions, and we still have the same lack of answers. Let's recall that over the past 10 years, this budget has become fat off of around $300 million more dollars. We cannot get DOC to give us clear, consistent, honest reasons why they have needed such a huge increase, what they have done to control their spending, or if they have implemented the programs we have codified as a legislature in statute. That is also undisputed. We learned this through the SMART Act hearings over the past numerous years. We stood against HB 1158 a few weeks ago to send a firm message to the executive branch and to DOC that we have had enough. Because we stood with each other, the governor's office listened. An executive order was issued, creating a commission specifically to address the problems associated with DOC, specifically to address the overpopulation issue, specifically to have DOC demonstrate between now and the long bill steps to address overpopulation. The tip of the hat to the governor's office and to DOC is that we would not kill 1158, but also we wouldn't pass it either. Instead, this commission was created because we are looking not to kill it, but not to pass it. This commission is to do its work before we decide what we're going to do with 1158. That's always been, at least to my knowledge, the understanding of this body, is we will hold this bill in abeyance until we see actual movement. We know through the Fetzer decision that DOC has wrongly calculated parole release dates. We know that DOC has failed or refused to provide the parole board the case files of those eligible for parole. This failure/refusal results in parole having to deny parole because they have no info. We know that we have empty community corrections beds in the amount of hundreds. And with respect to that Fetzer decision, it affects around 2,700 individuals. We stood firm with each other, recognizing that holding up HB 1158 is leverage to force the DOC to start relieving the pressure of overcrowding based on those tools that we have provided them. Leverage. So, why would we give up this leverage? Particularly when there's only been one meeting And we have not seen any results, any movement, any changes from DOC. Why would we give up that leverage? How many of you have been in a card game and you have a really good card? Would you give it up just because someone promised you something? Probably not. Some people call this bill a true-up. That was the same language used when we rejected the bill the first time around. So why is today's true-up any different than the rejected true-up argument 3 weeks ago? Nothing's happened. Have you gotten any promises from DOC? Anyone here want to raise their hand and say they got anything? We haven't. We haven't gotten anything from DOC. No promises, nothing. So how is it that the true-up of 3 weeks ago that we rejected is somehow valid today? Still others say that we should pass HB 1158 because we can hold DOC's feet to the fire during the long bill. Please, who are we kidding? For those of us who have gone through at least one long bill process, we know most, if not all, amendments are rejected. We know that our good JBC members have to oppose each amendment as precedent requires. Even if they don't want to, they still have to oppose those amendments. And we know that in the end, we will pinch our noses and vote for the long bill because we don't want to hurt Coloradans by not passing a budget. Waving around the long bill as leverage, it just doesn't cut it. We know better than that in this chamber. Colleagues, I have faith that our members who sit on the commission will be in a better place to negotiate with DOC when the very thing that resulted in their being sat as commissioners was the threat of killing HB 1158. And they still have that in their back pocket. If HB 1158 is passed today, and you take this leverage away from the commissioners, this chamber and the people, then I can only imagine that we will have an epic, robust, and lengthy long bill debate. One that will not be measured in terms of dozens of amendments, but hundreds of amendments. One that where time is not measured in seconds, minutes, or hours, but by days and nights. I imagine this will happen because each of you knows that Coloradans are being fleeced by this unaccountable department, and it is unacceptable to allow this behavior to go unchecked. And it remains unchecked. As of yesterday, we heard a bill that directly relates to this one in Judiciary, where they said that they didn't like the bill, that it was a direction that they didn't like. So I asked the question, because this is an issue that's been festering for years with DOC. And I asked the question, well, then why didn't you propose something? Why haven't you proposed something? For years you haven't proposed anything, but you don't like this bill? You know what the answer was from them? Crickets. Nothing. That's how this department operates. They will give you no answers and they will give up no ground. And that's why after one meeting with the commissioners, we don't have any answers to our questions. This bill, as I have indicated yesterday, is premature. We need to do better by the state of Colorado. We need to be held accountable to the people as well when we vote for millions of dollars of increase off of a true-up. Do you know what true-up actually means? It means that they are seeking forgiveness instead of permission. It means that they spent money and then came back over to us and said, hey, sorry, we spent the money. Give us some. That's what this is. Let's not take our leverage away, folks. We're the second co-equal branch of government. I ask for a no vote.
Further discussion? Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I have wrestled around with this bill for weeks now. and this issue now for years, alongside a good colleague that I respect. DOC is a problem. No doubt about it. That's not even really up for debate anymore at this point, because we have continually seen an increase in the private prison population and an inflated budget that has no explanation when we have other resources and other options that we can use. Absolutely. In this supplemental, I am absolutely not happy with that we have to spend an additional $5+ million on private prisons when we have empty beds in community corrections and when we have a parole board that is frustrated with their dealings with DOC. And so I'm glad that we took a moment, we paused before passing 1158, because it got the attention of the first floor. It finally got the attention of this department. And I believe that we are on a good path with the task force that has been assigned. But 1158 is not a hostage. And I want to be clear about that. This bill is not a hostage. We have to govern. And so as difficult as this is for me to even say, I'm going to ask for an aye vote on this. I'm going to ask for an aye vote on this because I have faith in the task force and in the work that they're going to bring forward. I have faith that we're going to finally get some answers and some movement on a debate that we have had for years around Department of Corrections and our rising prison population numbers. But I wanted to be clear, and I'm speaking not to the members in this chamber, but to the first floor and to the Department of Corrections, that if this task force doesn't do anything, if this task force leaves us in the same place with the same questions, I absolutely agree with my colleague, the long bill will be a point of contention. I want it to be known here right now. But on this bill, 1158, it is now time for us to govern and move forward. And so, members, I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the issue before us shouldn't be one of leverage. We should be able to govern. And unfortunately, we wouldn't have a study group issued by an executive order had we not been able to act as a legislature and govern according to what's in our domain, to be able to withhold funds when we see a program that is not using the funds to execute their mission appropriately. And there's many people here that know far more about this issue than do I, and they care deeply, and they're on this study group. And that's what it is. There's 8 members here that are investigating and negotiating and deciding exactly how to spend taxpayer money appropriately. And until they resolve that process, I don't know if we have the ability to be able to open those floodgates and be able to give them money while they're discussing how best to resolve the issue. I don't think we do them any service by doing that early. I'd like to see a good outcome come of that discussion. I think the one step that has been taken for that hearing to go on is a good one. And we've heard a report back that A, it's been formed, and 2, the meeting was a good one. But that's not our goal. Our goal is not to take one step forward. Our goal is not even to have a study group. Our goal is to resolve a structural problem here. I don't know the details of all that. I don't purport to want to be involved in that because I think we have some good leaders who are taking the initiative to properly do it. I know that the JBC and the study group should all be in support of being able to continue funding while this negotiation and discussions happen, and God bless them for doing it because that is their role. But that's not the role of the rest of us. The rest of us is to support those members and to acknowledge that the JBC's role is to keep the budget and monies flowing to all the branches of government. But we have a problem here, and people recognize it, and people are trying to solve it. I don't want to have this discussion in the long bill. That is leverage, and that is the gamesmanship that partisan politics has to play in order to wrestle with the first floor and the second floor. I'd rather see structural change take place right now, and to be able to have the Department of Corrections accountable to the taxpayers and those that have elected us to make sure that they are accountable and that our government runs as efficiently as possible for getting its job done that they send us here to do. So I would urge everyone to continue that the issue that to continue where we are now and not fund the Department of Corrections in this supplemental. That we need to be able to tell them clearly, we want you to continue discussions with those that are on this study committee, and we want you to do it genuinely and with fervor in order to resolve the root problem that has been going on for years. And when they're satisfied and they come back, both the governor and our study committee come back and say, we truly do have peace in our time, and then we can say, great, let's fund them. But until then, I would urge voting no on this supplemental. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Navitas.
Thank you. I came down to the well yesterday and I spoke about this bill, and I was proud of everybody in this body that we were utilizing our authority to make changes. Since that time, I haven't changed because I still believe that the study group can make some changes, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story that happened to me yesterday. I had a bill in Judiciary, House Bill 1040, that was asking corrections. It was actually giving them authority to develop incentives for contractors to be able to provide treatment services to sexual offenders. We have in prison 672 sexual offenders that are past their parole date. They haven't received treatment. They can't get out on parole until they receive treatment. And there's no movement from corrections to get them out. So this tool that my bill was offering to them was to say, okay, here, if you want to contract for providers because you don't have enough providers, here's a way where you can give them incentives above what the JBC offers through common policies. It was an offer to them to address an issue they have that increases population in our prisons. They opposed it. When I spoke to the legislative liaison in the morning, I told her she wanted me to do a study instead. And I said, I don't think we need a study. We know we have people in there that could possibly be out, and this gives you a tool. And she said, well, we can't agree with it. And I said, well, I'm going to move forward and hopefully get it passed so that way it's a tool that the study group can use in order to help manage the population. And she told me, I wrote that executive order, and it's very narrow. It is not intended for these kinds of bills or those kinds of policies. So wait a minute. I thought that executive order was to do exactly that, to have our body give you ideas and bills to alter the population. And she said, no, it's very narrow. So I think DOC is showing their hand as far as their intentions. We heard the bill in Judiciary yesterday afternoon, and they came and they spoke against it. As my colleague said, they offered no alternatives, but this is a real problem. We had a unanimous vote on the bill in Judiciary because we all recognize this is a problem. We can't have people languishing in our prisons, and we're not helping them to get out and function in society. You know, if they don't get treatment, and most of them are indeterminate sentences, which means they have a set sentence, and they're going to get out, and they may not receive treatment. So it's hugely important. So even though I'm going to vote for this bill, and I think you should, vote your conscience, but I'm going to vote for it because I do rely on our members who are on that study group to really hold their feet to the fire. I'm reminded of an old saying of, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or shame on you. Fool me twice. It's probably shame on me both times. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And the me is us. So we're going to have the same conversation with the long bill. And we really have to hold them accountable through this working group. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, we are at an interesting inflection point in this discussion. On the one hand, we are coming to the end of a long and interesting debate about 1158. And on the other hand, I truly hope that we are about to begin a longer and more fundamental discussion. And I wanted to talk about that inflection point. On the one hand, a budget is a spreadsheet. On the other hand, the budget is also a moral document. And that is never more true when a budget is a budget about criminal justice. And it's true even when we are only talking about a supplemental or a true-up to a budget about criminal justice. Or to put it a slightly different way, a budget is a set of choices that we make, or a set of choices that have already been made, in some cases quite long ago. Those choices drive the DOC budget that we consider now today. I ran some numbers, and the DOC budget is up 17% from 2004 to 2017, adjusting for inflation. And I'm not happy about that. And I'm not happy about everything that DOC does or fails to do. But I don't blame DOC 100% for that, because DOC incarcerates people according to the laws that we here make. And I don't agree with all the charging decisions that every district attorney in Colorado makes, but district attorneys charge under the laws that we make. And I may not agree with every sentence that every judge in any court in Colorado hands down, but judges sentence under the laws that we here make. We heard some reference between Colorado's incarceration rates and other countries. We don't even have to look outside of the 50 states. According to the Sentencing Project, our rate of incarceration per 100,000 is about 3 times the rate in the state of Maine. Are we here more wicked by 3 times than people in the state of Maine? Of course we're not. Rather, I think the answer is that the laws of Maine embody different choices than our laws embody. Here's a really simple example. Somebody walks into a store, a Best Buy, and steals a laptop. Is that a crime? Of course it's a crime. But how do we punish it? Probation? Community service? A month in jail? A year in DOC? 5 years in DOC? There isn't necessarily a right answer. It's a choice that we make. Those choices drive the DOC budget. In 1985, our predecessors in this legislature passed one bill to double the presumptive range for all felonies. It was the so-called Milky Bill. 33 years and probably hundreds of millions of dollars of expanded DOC budgets later, that law is still on the books. In 1986, were the very same felonies all of a sudden twice as odious as they had been in 84? Or in 84, were they merely half as odious as they were in 86? No, neither of those is true. A different choice was made. As central as the Joint Budget Committee has been in formulating the supplemental, and I want to thank all of the members of both parties for putting in the work, the real question is bigger than the JBC. And as central as Judiciary Committee may be for hearing most of the bills that affect the substantive law in this area, the question is bigger than the Judiciary Committee. And as central as the working group hopefully will be, and I want to acknowledge the Assistant Majority Leader and the Assistant Minority Leader and Representatives Herod and Willett and everybody else who was involved in pulling this group together, and Chairman Lee, the question is ultimately bigger than the working group. Because ultimately, the question of the DOC budget is the responsibility of all 65 of us here, because all of us, all 65, make the laws under which DAs charge, judges sentence, and the DOC incarcerates. If you are conservative, then I think you ought to be concerned about the intersection. I think you ought to be concerned about criminal justice, because you're concerned about the intersection of personal liberty and the state. And there is no more fundamental intersection of personal liberty and the state than criminal law. If you are progressive, then I think you are concerned about equality of opportunity. So you should be concerned about criminal justice, because right now people do not have equality of opportunity in the criminal justice system based on race or ethnicity or access to means. If you are conservative, then I believe that you are concerned about personal responsibility and self-sufficiency, and not having too many folks reliant on public sector support programs. So I think that you should be concerned about criminal justice, because too many people, even after serving their time, continue to face collateral consequences in housing and employment that raise barriers to their ability to work and provide for themselves and their families. And again, if you are progressive, then I think you believe that one's possibilities in life should not be determined by the zip code you're born in or the zip code that you live in. And you should be concerned about criminal justice, because if we look at the data, there are some disparities that should make us really, really uncomfortable. And again, if you are conservative, I think you don't like expensive government programs that don't work. So you should be concerned about criminal justice, because after decades, there are a lot of expensive government programs that don't work in the world of criminal justice. And on the other hand, there are some less expensive ones that really do, and we'll have one of those in Judiciary next week. And regardless whether you are conservative or progressive, Republican or Democrat, I think that if you are a person of faith, then you believe in redemption and forgiveness and second chances. And the reality, if we look at the numbers, is that more than 90% of people who go inside DOC will at some point come out. So, whether you believe in being tough on crime or in redemption or a little bit of both, I want to suggest that it is profoundly in all of our interests to make sure that when offenders come out, they can reintegrate into society and don't go back inside. Because lowering recidivism means lowering the rate of crime. So again, the buck stops with all 65 of us. We have these black name badges on, not the judges, not the DAs, not DOC. So the supplemental in front of us here has become a lot bigger conversation than a supplemental bill usually is. It's been very interesting. I'm glad it has become a bigger conversation. I think it needed to be at this moment. And what I want to say is that there are bigger questions yet to come, questions that ought to engage all 65 of us. There will be budget questions. They will be moral questions. I hope that we all grapple with them seriously. In the near term, after struggling with this bill a great deal, I will, with much reluctance, be voting yes, in the hope that more reform is to come.
Further discussion, Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief. I'm sure that's a relief. One of our members yesterday brought up an amendment that failed, but I want to read that amendment again. I took a picture of it. The Department of Corrections and the Governor's Office violated the spirit of Section 24-37-305 from Senate Bill 17-267 by not including a 2% operating reductions in this budget request. Therefore, I'll make it a little shorter. This budget request, this bill is both irresponsible and not fiscally responsible. I think the word that some folks were looking for yesterday is scofflaw. I wish there was a Department of Corrections for the Department of Corrections. Oh, wait, that's us. So for this and many reasons, not only inflated figures that we've received on the budget, not only the inflated fiscal notes we have received, I think we should be a no on this to send a message. This working group, I do have some faith in this working group, but we can do that without the supplemental and bring it back at another time. We've got some time in this session, but let's send a message now that this is not okay. I urge a no vote.
Further discussion. Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I apologize to be in the eye of this storm. I do ask for a yes vote on the supplemental bill in front of you, House Bill 1158. And as you've heard from many of my more articulate colleagues, the purpose of a supplemental is really looking at this year's budget, and the conversation that has ensued is really more about what are we going to do next in next year's budget. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you of what you are voting on if you do vote for House Bill 1158. And we did receive a letter from Christina Rosendahl highlighting what actually the supplemental request does. It really is addressing 4 issues. One is it reflects a fluctuation in the actual prison population versus what was projected in our long bill. The second thing it's doing is it is feeding additional female inmates that we have in the system that we hadn't projected when we developed the long bill. The third thing it is doing is covering additional medical costs that we have with our population that is related to the increase in the caseload we have this year versus what we projected. And the fourth thing it does is that it allows the department to cover some safety equipment needs that have been generated. That is what the supplemental bill is. And while I mentioned that these are the facts of the matter and this is the bill in front of us, I also have to acknowledge the fact that this conversation has raised bipartisan concerns about what is happening in our Department of Corrections. There are bipartisan concerns and needs for accurate and believable projections. There is bipartisan concern for better utilization of existing space that we have right now in community corrections and in the parole system. There is bipartisan support for the need to pass laws that appropriately place offenders in the system and that implement appropriate interventions and treatments and services that keep people from ever entering the correctional system in the first place. Personally, I think those investments should include early childhood education, support for families, and better interventions for juveniles to get into the system. But I have to tell you, one of the reasons for confusion about this bill is that during the interim, and without changes in some of the policies that we currently have and some of our statutes, we are on the path of escalation. During the interim, the request in front of us was not just this true-up of expenses, but on our discussion table at the Joint Budget Committee during the interim was the idea of expanding private prison contracts, expanding the usable space and opening CSP2. So no wonder everyone's confused. And up until the week before the supplemental package was developed, we were continuing to have those conversations in the Joint Budget Committee. But like you, on the Joint Budget Committee, we have bipartisan concerns about the direction that we're heading, which is why this supplemental has scaled back to exactly what the needs are that have been generated in the department during this budget year. I just want to say how much I appreciate the attention that this issue has generated, because I believe it's through this action that we will make positive changes on this trajectory path that we're on that I think personally is heading us in the wrong direction. I have faith in the bipartisan work that has come out of this conversation with the governor's office and the colleagues that have stepped up to help us with this issue, and the bipartisan effort to redirect the path that we're on with corrections. But I do ask for your support of House Bill 1158. Thank you.
This is Minority Leader West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, first of all, I have a nice warm feeling in my soul today because about a year ago, I started talking about how all of us in this chamber should take more ownership for the budget process. And this is exactly the kind of conversation that I hoped would result from that. So I welcome the fact that we desire more fingerprints and more eyeballs on the budget because at the end of the day, our budget is a reflection of the values of this body. So what are those values? In the context of DOC, the values from my perspective and what has continued to gnaw at me is the explosion in population that DOC says we are going to have, that compared with the numbers that simply don't bear that out. So when you have population numbers going this way, when you have community corrections numbers going this way, and yet you have this department's budget doing this year after year after year, it suggests to me that there are systemic problems. This morning I gave, I think, what is my 5th interview on this topic, and I can tell you that my anger has not subsided, my frustration has not subsided. I hear your anger, I hear your frustration, and I share it. I continue to share it. It burns deep within me. It will motivate me as we work on this working group, and I will not shrink from that task. I realize it's a big ask to request that you vote for this supplemental. And I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the commitment to process, and I appreciate the new desire that we all have to engage with our joint budget committee members to make sure that the budget that we pass in the long bill reflects our values as a state. I wouldn't be recommending this step to you if I didn't think, or if I thought that this compromised our position or placed us in a weaker position. And I recognize I have many colleagues in this chamber who feel like we're giving up our leverage. Over the course of my 30-year legal career, I've negotiated a lot of settlements. And I think I sort of understand somewhat the concept of leverage and when you make certain decisions in the context of negotiations. And we are in a negotiation. I'll certainly grant you that. And I may live to eat my words, and I'm sure I'll be reminded of this in April if this is not successful. But I am optimistic. And with Representative Herod, with Representative Lee, with Representative Willett, we are committed to working hard for the members of this chamber to make sure that your voices are heard in this process. So thank you very much for your discussion on this very, very important topic. And I hope it will remind us when the long bill comes to the table, not just for the DOC's budget, for all of the departments that we're funding, that the values of our state are reflected in that document. Members, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Representative Hood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise in support of this supplemental as well. Members, I want to thank you all for the conversations that we've had around the Department of Corrections, their budget, their policies, and their values. The conversation must continue. I have a lot of faith in the working group that has been put together, and I want to remind the members that the only people that are serving on that commission, on that working group, that have a vote in this body are the 4 of us, the members that were mentioned earlier today. So we will work with good faith that the Department of Corrections will come to the table to discuss the issues that you all have brought forward today very clearly, and I know that they're listening. Very clearly, we have to reverse the trend that the Department of Corrections is going in. The way that we do that is not by holding a bill hostage, but it's by rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done. We must look into this budget, we must look into policies, and we must bring those 2 budget and policy conversations together to make change for the people of Colorado. That is what we were elected to do. That is what I came here to do, and I am very proud to see the very strong bipartisan support to rein in this budget and make sure that we are making the best decisions for the people of Colorado. I ask for your support today. I appreciate your support moving forward in this conversation, regardless of where you fall on the supplemental today, because we will need your support moving forward. Thank you, members.
Further discussion? Representative Leonard.
Great. Thank you, Madam Speaker. With deference, I speak after the two members who are part of the study group. I think that they have summed it up very nicely, and with the utmost respect for them and all the rest of the members, I appreciate their words, and if I were in their position, I would say exactly the same thing, because when we send these 8 members to have discussions of this nature, they must do it in good faith, and they must be able to say exactly what they've said, which is, we expect good faith, and we honor it, and we want to even encourage our members to be able to continue the funding of the Department of Corrections while they continue their discussions. So I 100% appreciate that attitude. However, for the 4 members, for all the rest of us who are not of those 4 members, we show them our support, and we stand behind all 8 senators and representatives that are negotiating with the governor and the executive branch and the Department of Corrections by standing firm and saying, we aren't going away. We do care. We are sending them there for a purpose, and we care about the outcome. We care about the process enough to pause in approving this supplemental until they resolve the issue. And as one member said, we have time to do that. We got granted an executive order only for one reason, because we paused. We are now wanting that process to continue and we should pause. And so I would continue to urge, regardless of the good intentions of the JBC and our study group, that we should hold firm and show them our support by pausing on this supplemental until they're fully resolved with their process. So I would urge a no vote on this supplemental. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Claver, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote on House Bill 1158 on third reading and final passage. Representative Covarrubias. Representative Covarrubias. It's so nice of you to join us. I think that is a $5 fine. Please close the machine. With 44 yes votes, 16 no votes, and 5 excused, House Bill 1158 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. All right, Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Monday, February 26th.
All right, seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over. Further announcements or introductions? Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you all for that great debate and making sure it ended by noon, because the Joint Technology Committee will be meeting in room 352 at 12 o'clock to discuss blockchain technology with the National Cybersecurity Center, and we may even be discussing some potential legislation. So you are all more than welcome to come learn a little bit more about how your Bitcoin is being kept safe through blockchain, or you can just watch us eat lunch at noon, room 352.
Children's Caucus. Say that too.
Further announcements? Representative Singer and Representative Ransom.
Want to take it away?
Thank you, members. We're just announcing you'll have an invitation in your email, but Children's Caucus meets Monday at noon. We'd love to have you upstairs in Senate 354.
All right. Further announcements or introductions? Representative Lantine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if you are not interested in hearing about Bitcoin but would like to meet your local optometrist, it's Optometrist Day at the Capitol, and there's a lunch downstairs. So please join us. I'm seeing Representative Gray pointing to his glasses, so he knows his optometrist really well. So it'll be downstairs, and Representative Escar. It'll be downstairs in room 112. So we hope you can make it. Lots of eyes here. Thank you. Lots of eyes.
All right. Representative McCain. Thank you, Representative Lantine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So today is your lunch date with the Colorado Pest Control Association down at the Supreme Court chambers. Come down, say hi, grab a bite to eat, learn about all the nasties we kill. There you go.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd just like to share some good financial news today, especially for those who are representing the Pueblo, City of Pueblo area. Pueblo resident ratepayers should see at least a $30 savings this year drop in electric bills because of the new lower federal tax being charged to Black Hills Energy and other utilities in the state. Black Hills filed a plan with the Colorado Public Utility Commission this week that says it will pay $6 million a year less in federal taxes each year because the new tax code drops corporate rate from 21% to 35%. The savings will go to ratepayers in a monthly credit, the utility said on Thursday, and a reduction could appear as early as May on the billing. So that's good news for those who live in the state of Colorado, that their energy bills are going to be lower. It's great news.
Representative Liston.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to serve with you. And in that same vein, members, there is great economic news. A little organization called the Federal Reserve Board, I think some of us has heard of that sets monetary policy. The latest minutes of the Federal Reserve just came out in January, and the minutes of the Federal Reserve, they were more optimistic about the economy that they had been in December due to the tax cuts, and the economy is going to continue to grow and prosper due to the growth in the economy and the tax cuts. So that's good news for everybody. That's today's Good News Economic Report. Thank you very much.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I received a note in the mail last week from my great-grandkids, and it's unbelievable how it could make it to my mailbox, but they were really upset because they're having to pay back this $1.5 trillion tax giveaway that the federal government just gave to corporations and extremely wealthy individuals. And so I'm really glad that the ratepayers in Pueblo are going to get their share of my great-grandkids' money in the next couple of years. But guess what? Their grandkids are going to have to pay that back too. So I think let's keep this in perspective, and nobody likes to see these massively ballooning deficits.
There's lots of enlightening announcements to this afternoon. Any further announcements or introductions? Oh my goodness, wow. Seeing none, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess till 1 o'clock today.
All right, seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until 1 p.m. today.